Good morning, gamers. Today I want to talk about Herald of the Sun. AC Lightsmith has been the big build that everyone has been talking about for both Raid and M+, and while I do recommend it in pretty much all content at the moment, I want to highlight Herald of the Sun M+ gameplay. The build that I run for Herald is called the Solar Crusade build, and I will make sure that build is linked in the description below. You can also find it on Wings Is Up. This build is very, very powerful for burst AoE and spot healing, which is what makes it strong at really high key levels when damage patterns are super, super spiky. This is a build that I think is viable at all key levels, so if you prefer playing Herald over AC Lightsmith, definitely run this build and see how it feels in M+. I think that it feels just as good as AC Lightsmith. The only real difference in lower keys is that you're going to have less damage, but you will have more control over your healing and where it goes, so I think there are positives and negatives, and both builds are very strong for keys right now. So you shouldn't feel forced to play AC Lightsmith if you don't want to. This is going to be a +16 City of Threads. There are two dungeons that I think Herald specifically thrives at a lot. Grim Batol, because AC doesn't actually heal the healing absorbs off of people, and then City of Threads is the other one because the damage patterns work really well for the Solar Crusade build and just having constant targeted healing. So today we're going to dive into my gameplay as Herald in this key. I did a similar video for AC Lightsmith a few videos back. This one I'm going to go over my Herald gameplay and kind of just talk you through my decision making and my globals as we go. If you want to follow along and see exactly what abilities I'm casting, I have my action tracker right here, right below my player frame. So just feel free to watch that to see which spells I'm casting. So here at the start, we are going to grab this buff, and then we're just going to do a nice, simple first pull here. Make sure we get our kicks, and I'm looking for the only real damage event here, which is going to come from this Swarm Lord. Now, obviously, if you're pugging, a lot of these casts are going to get off, but fortunately, in a more controlled environment, you can kick most of those and only worry about the Swarm Lord's AoE. Basically, just make sure that you have your Virtue out anytime the dot comes up. Even if you're in a pug environment where casts are getting off, you don't want to pop your Virtue when the Swarm Lord is not getting his AoE off, because our Virtue timing works that we can Virtue every single one of those AoE dots. So if casts are getting off, spot heal them, but hold your Virtue for the actual dot. So here, again, this next pull, it's going to be the same thing. We're doing this Swarm Guard. Even if damage is going out from other things like cast getting off or whatever, I'm not spending Virtue. I'm just spot healing and then dispelling. And then as soon as this dot goes out, you're going to see me immediately press Virtue here. So I Virtue, and then I'm going to use Divine Toll to replenish my Holy Power. Always important with Divine Toll, you want to make sure to spend your Holy Power first. So you'll see I had the option of just Divine Tolling immediately right here. But instead, I'm going to Dispel, and then I'm going to spend my Holy Power, build up to 3, spend that, and then I'm going to Virtue and Divine Toll so that I actually get full use out of my Holy Power. A lot of gameplay that I watch from people involves overcapping whenever you press Divine Toll. Now, that being said, obviously, sometimes you just have to send the Divine Toll if you're in an emergency, but the majority of the time, you should be able to think a little bit more ahead and prep for that better. So one thing about this pack specifically that I'm going to talk about is the timings. You'll see early on, the timings are very desynced, where the debuff comes out, you can ping and dispel, and then the AoE dot comes a few seconds later. So you have time to spot heal that person, get the dispel out, dodge, and heal people up, and it's not a big deal. The second dot here, the timing of it happens after the AoE, so people should be topped from your Virtue. And then you can just spot heal the player, and it's not too dangerous. The third one, however, is where things start to get sketchy, because this one is always where I warn my team, this is going to be a fast dispel, because here it's going to come out while the Ravenous Swarm dot is out. So for this one, you want to make sure that you have some type of big throughput cooldown, maybe just press Aura Mastery, something preemptively, and make sure that you get that dispel very quick. You may need to sack the player if they don't have a defensive. Just make sure you dispel them very quickly and then get back to healing. I'm just going to skip forward a little bit and go to boss. For this boss, I have made a video about exactly how I play this. I always ping the player before I dispel them. That way my team can dodge the first ability that comes out, like the first set of orbs, and then dodge the second set of orbs. So you don't have to dodge everything all at once. and it's just a lot easier for both pugs and coordinated groups. So if you haven't checked out that video, I highly recommend it. Because I've made that video, I'm not really going to discuss this boss at length. I'm just going to quickly demonstrate how I heal this boss, which is making sure that anytime these debuffs are coming out, I pre-virtue and then look for the ping, dispel, and then just spot heal the other player. The reason that I virtue that and not this AoE is because that dot is actually the scariest part of this fight. The AoE that this boss does, this Vociferous Indoctrination, really does not hit that hard. Even at a plus 16 key level, you could let the whole thing go off, and even if you only did one small heal, nobody would die. So there really isn't much concern in terms of your team dying from Vociferous Indoctrination. There is, however, major concern of your team dying from this dot. So you want to make sure that you're on top of the dot and you have some type of throughput and ideally virtue as well available for that dot when it's coming out. The rest of this boss is kind of straightforward, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip forward. So basically the way this works, it's the same exact trash pack 3 times in a row with a slight difference. The big thing that you want to watch for is this Pursuer. This Pursuer does a lot of single target damage via knife throw casts, and the Eye of the Queen is going to do a Void Rush. And that Void Rush is going to put dots out on everybody, and that dot is going to hit very hard. So you want to make sure that every time Void Rush happens, that you are looking for getting your virtue out, going into it with big holy power, and having some type of major throughput cooldown or defensive. You'll see that when this Void Rush goes out, the Pursuer is going to also be knife throwing. This is what you need to look out for. So you'll see Bond here gets targeted by the first Void Rush and is being targeted by the knife throw. So I'm just going to throw sack on Bond immediately because I see that. And then I see I get a knife throw with the thing as well, so I pop a defensive. So just watching for that knife throw and who it's on during that AoE is really, really, really important. A lot of Herald of the Sun gameplay is about rotating cooldowns and making sure that you have something for every damage event. So you'll see on that first one, I have Awakening. So I'm going to proc my Awakening here. I'm just going to get my stacks up. I'm going to be ready for this Void Rush. So I still have Awakening coming into this. I get my Virtue out as soon as Void Rush goes out. And then I just start healing with my Awakening. So I don't worry about spending, Aura Mastery or anything because I do have an Awakening proc. In this next one, I don't have an Awakening proc, so this is where I should be using Divine Toll. So you're going to see me build up to 5 Holy Power. Now I'm going to spend my last Holy Power. So again, the same thing where you're making sure that you get the most out of your Divine Toll as possible. Then I'm ready to Divine Toll, so I'm going to Virtue first as this Void Rush is going out, looking for that knife throw, and I'm actually going to Hodge that. So that's another great thing that you can do. Anytime the Void Rush goes out, if you can spend your Hodge on the Pursuer, it will make it so that during the Void Rush, you don't have to worry about healing the knife throws in addition to the Void Rush. So it can't like wombo combo somebody. So very good thing to do. I got my Virtue out. Everyone was safe enough that I could spend my Global to Hodge and then go into my Divine Toll, where here we're just doing our typical Divine Toll rotation and looking for the player with knife throw, which is obviously Bray right here. So we're focusing him. So for all of these packs, the only difference is that the first pack has that knife thrower, but the second pack does not. So this one doesn't have a knife thrower. This one just has an interrupt mob, this Webmancer. There's really nothing you have to worry about outside of kicking. So this one is very, very not scary. The third pack, however, does have the Pursuer in it. So this is the third pack, and it does have the Pursuer. It also has the kick, so we're going to need to do all 3 things. Where we're healing the Void Rush, we are kicking the Webmancer, and we are looking for stuns on the Pursuer, or just making sure that we are topping players during the Void Rush. So here, I've got Awakening, and I also have Divine Toll. I'm just going to send that Divine Toll, make sure that the group is super, super healthy. One thing that people don't really understand about Divine Toll is that a lot of the value from Divine Toll does not come from the initial heal. So this is a good example of me doing that. So you would think that I would want to spend my Divine Toll after the damage event actually hits. But I spend my Holy Power here, and then I'm actually just going to use my Divine Toll on the enemies. And the reason for that is I'm just like, okay, fuck it, give me the damage, because the healing power of Divine Toll often comes from the Holy Power generated plus the spot healing power of your triple holy shocks from Rising Sunlight, which is our talent. So I'm going to just Divine Toll the enemies for damage, even though the Void Rush is going out, because everyone is pretty healthy and I have my Virtue out. And now I'm going to use the bonus power from all that holy power and my Rising Sunlights to heal instead of actually relying on the initial Divine Toll heal. Really important to keep in mind, you don't always need or care about the initial heal from Divine Toll. Most of its power comes from the holy power that it generates and the Rising Sunlight procs that you get afterwards. I'm just going to kind of skip ahead here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, this is where stuff gets interesting. I know the first half of the dungeon, not really too focused on Herald's specific gameplay. That's because there's not a whole lot to worry about from a healing perspective as long as your group is playing well. This is where things start to get really intense because this is a lot of unavoidable damage. So I'm going to kind of talk about cooldown timings. Cooldown timings are the most essential part of this build. Unlike AC, where you just kind of constantly have cooldowns to rotate through because your wings is on half the cooldown, this build, it matters a lot more where you press wings. Now, that doesn't mean you want to sit on wings for like 5 minutes at a time. However, it does mean that you need to make sure you have wings available at key moments. This fight is a great example. In fact, the next 3 fights of this dungeon are all great examples of important wings timings. Here, you're going to see that I could pop wings directly on pole, but the beginning damage profiles of this fight, where it's just the knife throws and nothing else, you can heal through that without wings, and you really need to do that because you want wings for the super scary overlap here. And not only do you want wings, but you want the first half of wings. I kind of talk about the first half of wings in the Solar Crusade build a lot, but basically the idea is that the first 10 seconds of wings are your most powerful because that's when you put out all your dawn lights and you have all your sun's avatar stuff. So making sure that you have that first 10 seconds of wings at a crucial spot is really important. And that comes into play in later bosses here as well. This is a great boss example. You're going to see me pop wings here. Make sure that during these first 10 seconds, I have everyone topped right before this comes out in 1 second. So right here, this is where the big damage event happens. Before that, it's just a ton of knife throws, but it is a lot of damage. So you will need to pop your wings early. Don't wait until this exact moment. You need to make sure that when this icicle cast goes out, everybody is topped. So not only am I in wings, but I'm also going to Divine Toll this. So here you're going to see we spread out for a second from this AoE. We move back. I get my Virtue out. Remember that Virtue is all about positioning. If I waited until I was back here, my Virtue might not have hit that Evoker over there. So I make sure that I Virtue when I'm still relatively close to everyone else. Because remember that Virtue is a 30-yard radius. So as soon as this Dustbringer goes out, that's when I Virtue. Now, you'll be tempted to Virtue early on here. Do not press Virtue like 5 seconds into the fight. Because if you press it now, you don't have it for that big AoE. So you got to be very careful. You either press it directly on pole, or you don't press it at all until that circle comes out. Now, as soon as that circle comes out, that's when you want to hit Virtue and make sure that you have a ton of healing. So this is an example of me not caring as much about Holy Power. Remember how I said sometimes in emergencies, you can't care as much about your Holy Power loss from Divine Toll? This is one of those examples. So here, it doesn't matter what my Holy Power is at. As soon as I've got Virtue out on everyone, you'll see me spend 1 Word of Glory. But now here, I have the option, okay, I could Holy Shock, Word of Glory, then Divine Toll. But I need this healing now because this Icicles is coming out as soon as that's done. And that Icicles, I need to have the entire group topped for. So it's more important that I just send the Divine Toll, forget the Holy Power, and get my Rising Sunlight procs going for huge spot healing within my Virtue window to make sure everybody is topped before this AoE goes out. So you're going to see me Divine Toll, immediately spending all of my Rising Sunlight and my Word of Glories, and then the Icicles comes out. This is when you're going to see me Stone Form. Again, Dwarf is huge for this. Actually, I don't Stone Form there because we have a Shaman that can actually Windrush Totem with a special talent that clears that. But for those of you who don't have a Shaman, Stone Form is great for this, or just, you know, Dispel. Unfortunately, Freedom does not work on it. But again, I'm just going to replay this part one more time. You're going to see me go out. Immediately, I want to Virtue as soon as this circle spawns. I'm going to spend a little bit of my Holy Power, then just go straight into Divine Toll. and start spending holy power into triple holy shock into holy power. And we're also obviously going to defensive this because it's the scariest part of the fight. Now you'll notice that this fight kind of works in loops where you have phase 1, then phase 2, then phase 1, then phase 2, etc. Now you're not going to have wings for every one of these phases. The most dangerous phase is always this one with the icicles, and those are 1.5 minutes apart. You can see the timer right here. You will not have wings for the next one. So that's why I like to rotate wings for the first icicles cast, and then for the second icicles cast, you're going to see me bubble sack. But again here, the biggest thing to look for and watch out for is when this knife throw overlaps with this icicles cast. So right here, when this icicles cast is going out, you need to watch for the people getting targeted by knife throws, especially this person right here. The person that gets targeted by the knife throws immediately after icicles goes out is in a lot of danger. You'll see me immediately send my triple holy shock. Even with that triple holy shock, he dropped very low. Now, he didn't press it offensive at all, and that's for sure a mistake, but it's just something that you absolutely want to look out for. For this next phase, there are 2 major damage events, the first of which is not too scary, and you want to not be tricked into pressing Virtue on this first damage event. The first damage event is going to be this tank mechanic called Rhyme Dagger. Now, your tank is going to take a big hit, and then your group will also take a hit. However, that's the only damage event that occurs until the next Rhyme Dagger. So what you want to do is try to just heal up your group using spot heals and not spend your Virtue, because this next Rhyme Dagger cast is going to hit very hard, and it's going to be accompanied by Dustbringer, which is also going to do AoE. So you want to make sure that you have Virtue for this. You're going to see as soon as this Rhyme Dagger is about to be done casting, I'm going to press Virtue, and then this is the other spot that you want a Divine Toll. Now, assuming that you sent your Divine Toll in the first phase at that spot that I recommended, your Divine Toll should come back up for this exact spot. And that's very important because this is going to hit very hard, and there's going to be a lot of taking damage after. You're going to see right here, I immediately Divine Toll, and then I just use the Rising Sunlight and huge Holy Power generation from Divine Toll with Virtue to just AoE heal the whole group. Then it's just a repeat. So this entire phase is the exact same thing over and over and over again. That's the whole fight. The big thing to look out for here is these frontals are actually really stupid. Basically, they're like 20 times larger than what they actually look like and wider. So while you think you should be safe like here or there or pretty much anywhere here, you're generally not. You see that one? This one is going to go all the way back here. So you see me assuming that this area is not safe because of that frontal over there. So I run all the way over here. And it looks like that frontal actually got one of our... Yeah, see? So he got tricked by that. So our shaman got tricked by that exact frontal. He saw this area, thought that he was safe, but didn't see that frontal coming from there. That's actually much larger than what it appears. So he died from that frontal. It's very stupid. The visuals really need updating on this fight, specifically those frontals. But assuming that they don't get updated, that's just something that you have to look out for. Now, this is usually the area that I recommend bubble sacking. However, I happened to get an awakening proc at that exact time, and we had one person already dead, so there was less targets to heal. So I actually just decided that I was fine without spending the bubble there, and I could use that for another spot later in the fight. But usually that is always where you will see me. As soon as this Rhyme Dagger goes out, because we don't have our regular wings, you're going to see me instantly bubble sack. But yeah, like I said, that was kind of a think on the fly type of thing. And my wings also came back up at that exact moment. So I ended up just pressing wings and not worrying about bubble due to those circumstances. But usually the cooldown patterns of this fight is wings the first icicles, then bubble sack the second icicles, and then hopefully it's dead by the third. However, if you're feeling extra scared, you can just save your second wings for the third icicles. That does mean you're going to be sitting on wings for about a minute, but like I said, if you're feeling very scared, it's okay to do that. You'll just lose a little bit of damage, but that's not a huge deal. And once again, you'll see that I did send Divine Toll at that exact same spot right before the icicles comes out. And then in this next phase, same thing. We're looking for a Divine Toll cast as soon as this overlap happens. So this is where you'll see I didn't have Autumn here. So my Divine Toll doesn't come up for about 2 seconds into this cast. And so you'll see it is a little bit scary there, but then as soon as I get my Divine Toll, we're chilling. So yeah, always the same cooldown patterns for this fight. The rest of this fight is just the same stuff, so I'm going to move on. This section is just a lot of tank damage and a lot of kicks, so pretty standard HPAL stuff. Nothing really to talk about here. This Venom Shell is either very dangerous or very easy depending on if you have a Shaman in your group. We do have a Shaman, so it is very easy. If you don't have a Shaman, the way that I play this is ideally you have at least 1 or 2 dwarfs. Hopefully you are a dwarf yourself. Again, I recommend dwarf for anyone trying to push keys as HPAL. It is insanely OP for this dungeon set. So you can dwarf that poison and then immediately dispel another person and get rid of 2 immediately. You can also use bubble and sack. So there are a lot of different ways to get rid of these poison debuffs. A lot of people will also have the ability to dispel themselves. Hopefully they use that. If not, you should just make sure that you go into every one of these. You'll see, even though we have all this utility, I'm still playing as if we didn't, right? I'm still going into each one of these venom sprays with full holy power and pre-virtuing. So as soon as this venom spray hits, I have so much holy power that I can just run through. And that's with everybody, you know, actually having a way to clear. It's always important that you play as if nobody can clear, because sometimes people just won't press their buttons. The pop wings here, this is the first venom spray. I have so much healing throughput that I just use wings to heal through everything. And that's the way that I would play it, even if we didn't have dispels. Then I would hold Divine Toll, and the next one that comes out is the one that I would use Divine Toll on. So this is the second one here. And again, just going into it with holy power and then spending the holy power and immediately Divine Tolling. So that's how I play that. This next area is just kicks and dodging, so not really much to go over. This is the next thing I want to talk about. This boss is very scary. In my opinion, the scariest boss in here. It gets slept on very, very hard. And if you aren't prepared for how difficult this boss is, you can get screwed. The most important part of this fight is the Dark Pulse that happens, which happens when the boss reaches 100 energy. You want to make sure that you have one of 2 things. You either have wings, like actual wings, not just awakening, or bubble, one or the other. If you have neither, you're going to have a very, very bad time. So you'll see that I'm going to press awakening here, but I'm going to hold on to my actual wings. That's because I want my actual wings for the Dark Pulse. So we're just going to sit on wings for a bit. This is going to be the soaking of the orbs, just making sure that we soak all the orbs, don't let any go through. You'll see I often prioritize myself getting them because Eternal Flame hits harder on myself as Herald. So it's really easy to self-heal those off relative to other players getting them. And you're going to be tempted to pop healing cooldowns before this phase because everybody's soaking stuff and it can be, you know, sketchy. But you want to make sure that you hold your actual wings cast until the Dark Pulse is about to happen. And again, the reason for that is, like I've talked about before, the first 10 seconds of your wings as Herald is insanely strong. Do not underestimate it. So the big thing is making sure you have wings and you're waiting for this Dark Pulse to pre-virtue and then immediately pop all of your throughput for when the Dark Pulse is happening. So you'll see I got my virtue out. I don't even care about my holy power because as soon as I pop wings, my first button is just going to be Holy Shock with the triple Holy Shock. So triple Holy Shock into Word of Glory, into triple Holy Shock, Word of Glory, and we're just going to rotate through that. And we are doing so much healing. I did 40 million healing in 8 seconds there. That is one of the really, really huge parts about Herald, is just how much burst healing you can do in that first 10 seconds of wings. The rest of this fight is pretty much the same thing, just virtue every time that he does his little AoE bounce, and then making sure that you have something for each one of these Dark Pulses. Now, the reason that I talk about Bubble as its own cooldown is because it really is. So here, we're going to have another Vicious Darkness. We build up our Holy Power, pre-virtue, we're going to heal everyone up, and now we are going to look for soaking these orbs. Now, it's important that you soak the orbs with Bubble on the second set. This is the set that comes out right before the Dark Pulse. So this is the scary set of orbs. So you're going to see me very aggressively soaking as many of these orbs as possible, and then bubbling and forcing and just running through all of them. And that means that going into this Vicious Darkness phase, we are going to have absolutely 0 healing absorbs, and I am free to just focus on AoE healing and not worrying about clearing anyone's absorbs. The thing that makes this Dark Pulse so scary is when those healing absorbs are out at the same time. So I'm going to follow that bubble up with Divine Protection, because obviously my bubble wore off before the Dark Pulse actually happened. You can try to game it a little bit more, because you can soak as many orbs as you want before pressing bubble, and then bubbling will actually remove your healing absorb, as well as immune you from future ones. But earlier here, you'll see that my path to clear a lot of these orbs was running straight through all of this gunk. And so I just bubbled in order to, you see these over here. I just bubbled in order to run through all this gunk and clear everything as fast as I could, which is fine, because again, as long as we have everyone's healing absorbs cleared before this Dark Pulse, it really shouldn't be that hard to heal through, especially because you should always have Divine Toll for each of these Dark Pulses. Never send Divine Toll outside of the Dark Pulse on this fight. You can have Divine Toll for every single Dark Pulse, and you absolutely want that. You're not always going to necessarily need to press it, but there's no other part in the fight where you would need to use it for healing. And I do not recommend, this isn't a fight where you want to be like min-maxing your Divine Toll for damage. Just focus on healing. All right, and the rest of this fight is basically just the same thing on loop. So I'm going to go ahead and skip forward. So this mini boss, really not dangerous at all. You do not need a defensive to live this Umber Weave unless you're doing it at like a plus 17 key level and have 0 versatility. All you need to do is make sure you pre-Virtue. Pre-Virtue is going to give everyone the 5% DR, and it's going to allow you to heal everyone up very quickly. One thing I'll mention is that using Freedom on the boss is very important, but using it on this ad doesn't really do anything. You can do it if you want, just to break you free so you can interrupt the mob if it's out of melee range, or you can keep DPSing it. But the actual clearing of the roots does not happen on this ad. It only happens on the boss. So not really something you need to care about that much. You will see me doing it a few times just so that I can interrupt like right there. So this boss, really not that scary. You just have to make sure that you press your Virtue before each AoE and then just heal your group up. And that's it. So I'm going to skip forward to the War Shell. Now, this mob fucks. This mob is very scary and will deal a lot of damage to your group and has some very nasty overlaps. So you have to be super prepared for this. Typically, I like to send wings here, but if you send wings here, you won't have it at the start of boss unless you pull the War Shell first. So if you can, you always want to kill your War Shell first in order to get those wings on CD, and then you can do the other mini boss, which doesn't really require healing, and then you can go into the main boss with your wings. Now, that requires triggering the RP for the War Shell early, which you can do, but it just depends on your group and the way that they want to pull this section. So ideally, try to do War Shell first, but a lot of groups, that's not going to happen. So in that case, you'll just need to reverse your cooldowns on last boss, which I actually do here. So that'll be good for us to kind of discuss. This War Shell is so scary that I end up needing to press wings as soon as it comes up here. But right here, we have our Awakening proc. We're going to make sure every single one of these big hits we're pre-virtuing. Virtue timings for this are very, very important. So I'm going to go back and just kind of look over the virtue timings for a second. So first virtue here is going to be immediately upon pulling this War Shell. He's going to put out the dot, and we need to make sure we top the group very quickly. This is where you're going to see me press Divine Toll. Obviously, I was out of Holy Power. I need to make the most of my virtue window and top the group before this AoE gets off. So that's where Divine Toll comes in handy. We're going to defensive, and then we're just going to start blasting with Holy Prism, using our Holy Light, spot heal, and then the next dot comes out. This is where we're going to virtue again. Now, unfortunately, I don't really have much healing power here, which makes it a little bit rough. So that's why I called for AMZ. This next overlap is going to be a big AoE hit into the dot. We're going to virtue again right as this is about to go off to get the DR. And then we're just going to start healing as fast as possible. This is going to be scary though, so that's where you see me bubble sack. I know that that dot fucks, and I have almost no throughput. You can see my throughput. I have no Holy Power. I am in wings, but with no Holy Power, all I have is Holy Prism and a little bit of spending, and that's not enough to top the group in time. So I'm going to just go ahead and bubble sack in order to make sure that we make it through to the next AoE hit. Now is when I have big healing cooldowns. So this is where you're going to see me pop wings. We're going to, again, make sure that we pre-virtue. This is the overlap. This is the scariest part of this fight, where it puts out the dot and then immediately tremor slams during the dot. This is where you need big defensive power and big healing throughput. So you'll see, luckily, I had Divine Toll and Wings available. So I had all of my healing throughput for that. If you don't, that's a great spot to bubble sack. Obviously, I did it the one before, but normally you would have wings earlier on this pole. So you could wings the first half of it, and then when you get to this scary overlap, that's when you fall out of wings and you need to use bubble sack. But just remembering how powerful wings is, as soon as I press wings here, I'm just like, I tell my group, like, don't even press defensives, except for, you know, living the one shots, obviously, because I just have so much healing power. And then this is the last overlap of the fight. Hopefully you don't get this one. If you do, it can be very deadly. We did, unfortunately. That's kind of just the one that you want to beat. That's why you see we lost somebody there. The reason you want to beat that is because it's the full duration of the dot into the tremor slam. Now, we were only 0.8% off from beating that, so that's a bit unfortunate, but it is okay. All right. This is obviously the boss that everyone wants me to talk about the most. This boss is incredibly deadly, and playing it as Herald is very, very helpful, in my opinion, because you can basically solo an entire phase with your healing. Now, normally, if you have wings on pole, which is what I recommend, you can just use wings to carry super hard for the entire first and third phases. But here, you'll see that I didn't have wings on pole, and if you're sending it on that war shell, a lot of you might not have wings on pole either. So you might want to just do this rotation. So here, we want to make sure that going into every single one of these splice casts, we have as much holy power as possible, and we have virtue. We're going to wait to put virtue out until the first tick of the dot goes out. If you put virtue out too early on, you won't have it running for long enough during the damage event that it'll protect your group. So you want to make sure that you press virtue as soon as the first tick of splice goes off. That's the same for every single damage event in this fight. So we're going to immediately spend our holy power, then we're going to divine toll to get our holy power back. And we're just going to pop as much of that power as we can. You'll see how sketchy that was. That's just plus 16 key level damage patterns. It's very, very sketchy. It's very dangerous. Normally, when you don't have wings, on the phase where you don't have wings, you want a bubble sack. But I didn't have bubble sack available here, so that was obviously a little more sketchy than I'd like. This is, again, the second one. We're building up our holy power. I actually spent my holy power there, and the reason why is because I was one stack away from awakening. Normally, I wouldn't spend my holy power like that, but you're going to see me press Crusader Strike into awakening. Then I'm going to pop virtue and immediately start healing with my awakened proc. We had to blow lay on hands there, which is a bit unfortunate, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. The idea behind healing this boss as Solar Crusade is you want your team to commit as many possible resources as they can to the 2 phases without wings, and then for the 2 phases with wings, you will carry hard, and they basically don't need to hit anything at all. The way that you get through those other 2 phases where you don't have wings is by using Divine Toll, Aura Mastery, defensives, health pots, bubble sack. Everything in your kit that is not throughput related should be used in these other phases. So this phase, you're going to see me use Lay on Hands on this particular one, as well as my defensive. We're going to proc our awakening, just make sure we get as much healing out as we can. And I'm going to Lay on Hands the Evoker here. Once again, it's just doing everything in your power that isn't throughput related to keep your group alive in this area, because in the next area, your wings is just going to hard carry. So I'm going to look at this next area here, and this is where we're going to have wings hard carry. So I specifically tell my group when this happens, I say, don't press any defensives at all. I cannot stress it enough. Your wings is so strong here, your group doesn't need to do anything as long as you time your abilities right. So again, same exact virtue timing. We wait for the first tick to go out. We always try to have 3 or more holy power so that we can spend it and then immediately start building all of our holy power back with things like Divine Toll or Triple Holy Shock. There it is. We get our virtue out immediately after the first tick of damage. We start spending our holy power, go into our Triple Holy Shocks that we get from wings, and boom, the group is entirely full health, no danger whatsoever. Nobody presses any defensives except for Renewing Blaze, but that's okay. Then this next part, ideally what you want is to always have your awakening proc sometime within this area. And you'll see that's generally possible. So my holy power is up to, I've got 11 stacks, 12 stacks. Here we're at 14. Okay, so now we have our next awakening. So we're going to use that once again, to proc our awakening and hard carry the healing here. I always divine toll the second half because it's important to remember your wings, the first 10 seconds, like I've been talking about, is the most powerful section of our wings. So you can just use your first 10 seconds of wings to hard carry the group healing, and you don't need divine toll whatsoever. Then for the second one, you'll have your awakening proc plus divine toll, and that will be way more than enough healing to carry that. So again, here you're just going to see me press divine toll with awakening. Unfortunately, Bond pressed his defensive even though I asked him not to, but you know, better pressed than not pressed, I suppose. DPS just gets scared. They have a hard time trusting. Then it's just the same exact thing. So here is the next section without wings. So this is where we're going to use bubble sack. Normally, I would commit bubble sack to the first one. Okay, yeah, I do. Because again, you're always going to have divine toll for the second one of each phase. So the first one is always going to be the scariest. So here we bubble sack, and I actually didn't have sack, but bubble is enough. And then the second one, we're going to have our awakening proc, and we're going to have divine toll. So we should be hard chilling on this one. We make sure that we have our holy power. You'll see me literally, I stopped casting there for a few seconds because I wanted to time everything. So you'll see I was at 15 stacks of my awakening. I was at 4 holy power. So this is the perfect situation for me to be in. I refresh consecrate because I basically just want to buy time. I'm waiting for this splice to start casting. As soon as it starts to cast, I'm going to proc my awakening, since that obviously is not a heal with this build. So I want to get that available to me. It's going to build my last holy power. Then I'm going to press virtue right as the first tick goes out, as per usual. So there's the awakening proc. There's the virtue. Spend the holy power, and then spend our holy shock, holy power, and then boom. This is divine toll. Super, super free. You'll see how healthy the group is. Nobody even needs a defensive. We are hard chilling. And then we're back to the last phase, which once again is just wings carry. So here I tell my group yet again, just focus on DPS. Don't worry about defensives. I'm just going to blast healing. And once again, you'll see your awakening timings always line up perfectly so that you can proc your awakening and extend your wings. So you'll always have wings plus divine toll in the second half of each phase. So here's where the second half comes out with divine toll. Once again, you'll see me hold for a second, refresh consecrate. Same exact thing. I'm just waiting because I don't want to spend my holy power. First tick goes out. I immediately press virtue, spend divine toll, spend holy shock, spend, and it's just that rotation until we are nice and safe and a little close on the timer, but that's okay. We had a couple little mistakes. All right. I hope that was helpful for you guys. I know I went a little super in depth, and if you guys have questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I will answer them as best as I can. I know this was a little bit of a probably unnecessarily in-depth guide in terms of like every button that I was pressing, but cooldown timings are everything when it comes to this dungeon, especially for Herald. So hopefully this helped you figure out my cooldown timings and how you should use your cooldown timings better. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.